Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Going to do a video that I hinted at in a YouTube short about a week ago when I played about 15 seconds on my Nxtremes and said, hey, is it time for me to do a follow-up review now that I've had them for a year? I've also spent time this past year listening to a lot of other extreme speakers as well as other open baffles, and I get tons of emails. Well, how do these compare to spatials, linkwidths, Maggies? How do these compare with those cost no object speakers? So I want to kind of address all that in the video today, as well as share my experience after a year with these. So this is probably going to be a long video, and I normally just speak off the cuff, but I might have to chop this up and do a little bit of editing because there's just so much for me to cover for you guys. Oh, and you see this t-shirt? Well, you see my crazy hat, but we were talking at dinner with friends. You know, I wear crazy stuff. If you've been a long time subscriber, they dared me to wear a shirt like this. I'll show you what the rest of it says at the end of the video. Anyway, but getting back to the topic at hand, let's talk about the GR research and Nxtremes. And like I like to do in some of my videos, share more of, instead of just the primitive review that with audiophile jargon and subjectivity, or even 1 foot away measurements, I like to bring a macro picture to some of these things that has made me rethink things that I've learned that I think will apply to you and help you in your journey as well. And so the macro takeaway that I want to share with you is, first of all, no matter who you listen to for reviews and whatnot, there is an element, especially with speakers, that you have to factor in their taste, their listening room. Everybody's listening room is different. Their seating distance, whether they're using EQ, the associated equipment often has a lot to do with speakers. And in this case, it has a ton to do with the GR Research and Nxtremes in my room and what I'm going to be reporting on, because in my case, I'm using subs. I'm using different subs than even GR Research recommends with these. I'm using a crossover, electronic crossover to those subs that is different from what GR Research recommends with theirs. And so in a vacuum, I can give a review of the GR Research and Nxtremes only in a vacuum of my environment and how I'm applying it, both pre and post doing these things, and sharing with you how much of a difference these other things can make to extrapolate, even in my opinion, greater performance from these speakers. But right off the cuff, even if you just buy these speakers, don't even attach subs to them, just build them as is, exactly how designed, and put them in your room, I'd be hard pressed to find any speaker under 10K that can compete with these. There's going to be some like Maggies, if people like line arrays, line sources, and one like a Maggie 1.7 has that coherency of one driver material doing everything. And if you play low volume, some people may like that. Spatial Audio makes some under 10,000 that a lot of people enjoy for open baffle. But overall, I think as is, under 10,000, it's very hard to find any speakers that will compete with these alone. But what I was looking for is obviously something of great value. I always try to do that with my purchases, but I also want to try at this level I am in the hobby to try to achieve ultimate level performance. What can I find at that reasonable cost profile that will let me compete with mega dollar speakers? And so on their own alone, I don't think they can compete with the mega dollar speakers. And mainly it's in the bass area that I'll talk about. And that's why even GR Research normally recommends pairing these with their open baffle subs. And I've gone to Danny's house and I've heard his setup. And certainly that, now he's a little hyperbolic about it being the best in the world and yada, 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 but you know, it's normal marketing. I wouldn't say his room is the best I've ever heard. And his setup is even the best I've heard with Nxtremes, because I'll talk about what I've done differently that I think I like a little bit better than what I heard there. Although, like I said, it's competing with some of the best in the world, as is following GR Research's recommendations. What I would say is an important part of my evaluation of these is how I also accentuate them with my choices, like sealed box subs for the lower end. I like the way a sealed box pressurizes the room better, gives me that acoustic wave for those super low frequencies versus the open baffle nature of the other frequencies, which I still have open baffle bass for all these 16 6-inch drivers that still cover a a large percentage of bass, mid bass and higher for sure, and even a little bit of the lower stuff. But I just did not find, for getting ultimate level performance, that 6-inch drivers like to play rap super loud. Even though you got 16 of them, they have limited excursion, and the distortion profile when you try to get these to play 20 hertz and stuff like that, I don't think any speaker can do it to ultimate level performances. Competing with things under $20,000 and most speakers, yes, you're still going to be totally happy. But I'm talking about ultimate level performance. I found it was best to roll off these towers with my mini DSP SHD, which has an electronic crossover, and pass off to my subs such that they handle the very low stuff, alleviate both my amps, especially if you're using a flea watt amp, which I think Danny does use with these and recommends you can use. I don't think that combined with these 6-inch drivers is the best way to get ultimate performance at 20 hertz, 30 hertz, or even 40 hertz. The way I'm doing it, I think sounds better than what I heard at Danny's. It disappears. I also, with the mini DSP SHD, I'm able to control the timing of these towers with that. So the snap, there's really no calling attention to my subs at all. I've had many people over, they rarely know whether it's on or off, but they know they're getting 20 hertz for sure, especially with my 2 subs in this small room. So this is a key to the performance level that I think brings these competitive. When people ask me, do they compete with the best I've heard from all these? Yes. And like I said, in many cases, it's still better because I can tailor this room with room treatments. My listening position is where I want it for that immersive near field listening experience. I have the mini DSP, which has an EQ, which I've shown. I can tailor it to what my ears hear as positive, negative, and my frequency preference and curve. Not 1 meter away, which rarely translates to your listening position. It's good to know if a speaker is designed well, and that's another kudos, is that this speaker does not have the anomalies that a lot of speakers have, where when you're doing your EQ, some things do translate to your listening position that are bad. This one has very minor, such that it gives you the potential to use EQ strictly for your room and taste issues that remain. And almost everybody has taste different than totally flat. You can just change your ears while you're listening to yourself talk. You will sound different depending on how you move your ears. We all have different shaped ears. So again, you have to factor this into reviews that you listen to. People are not going to hear the exact same as you. And having the tools to allow you to adjust a well-made speaker that does everything empirically really good to now suit your taste, gives you full range performance like I've shown with what I paired together. You really have the ability at a fairly modest price point for audiophile budgets to get world-class performance. I will put this up against anything I've heard. You're going to have certain speakers like it's not like I haven't heard anything from other speakers that I don't like better. I do think that these drivers can be improved upon in terms of, is a plasma tweeter, AMT, diamond tweeter, raw ribbon, could all of those be better than this planar? Yes, in an empirical sense. But you're going to have to then find mid-range drivers that hand off and a crossover that mates as well as these 3 do. And that's hard to do. I will say the only speaker I've come across that I think does that part better is obviously Audiophile has the planar, and it's one driver doing a lot of the frequencies, and I think those have a very great coherency that competes with this. I think the Linkwitz probably has a little bit of an edge with their tweeter and mid-range quality, such that they, to me, in the upper end, give a little bit advantages that I heard. As a whole, though, in terms of, let's talk about the open baffles like the Audiophile and all that, I do like that this is a point source array, so that it gives me that ceiling height level performance that you get from a line source. For the most part, you get that open baffle array base that even Rel talks about for the most of the frequencies, and that gives you a soundstage that doesn't cut off at 2/3 of the room, which a lot of box speakers and typical mid-sized speakers, even at cost no object budgets, still have a limitation. It never reaches the ceiling. It loses that illusion of a real concert playing in front of you, just from the height of the presentation, not even talking about exact soundstage details. So I do like that this is kind of a hybrid of a line source and a point source speaker, and gives me that with that acoustic wave that a lot of Maggies can't give you, like 1.7s I've had in the past, and sound lines that I have in my rears. So, and then also it's a little bit of an advantage over the spatials, which are a great speaker. Like I said, under $10,000, they would be in the top 3 that I would recommend to people to buy. And depending on your preference for aesthetics and whatnot, and certain aspects, you may choose them even over GR research options. But for me, I am happier with this model, but I have no problem with people who would choose the spatials. I think they're excellent open baffle, and probably would rank them above Maggie's. And then Linkwits, I would put right on the same tier of these. The only thing that's different, that still gives me a little bit more preference to these, is that it does have that height line source, semi-line source in a point source array, but also the bass with the Linkwits is the open baffle bass, which is good, very good actually. Certainly world class and competes. I would buy the Linkwits if I didn't have to build something. That's the speaker I probably would buy right now. But if I had to say what I like better in my room than I've heard at the Linkwits is the bass here. The ability of this point source array open baffle bass for the mid bass and up. My steel box here, my mini DSP. I'm kind of doing a lot of what the Linkwits does well as already with the additions I have. So again, hopefully that clarifies it. You can't go wrong with any of those. And then I think at cost no object, Vox would be my choice speaker in terms of aesthetic, quality of drivers, pride of ownership. Obviously, if I had billions of dollars, I probably would choose that over this. But in terms of empirical performance alone, I'm happy with this. I never come back from any of these shows or these mega dollar systems and feel like, oh, I got to listen to this now after hearing that. Like I said, in some cases, with the right tuning, with the right experience, and the right tools with your speakers, you can extrapolate a lot of great performance in your room that can compete with those. Because sometimes in these great big budget rooms, especially at shows, they don't have much advantages at all. They've got a untreated room. They've got other issues that actually brings down their performance potential. So that's another very important thing to note. Even though I'm saying these compete with these other speakers, if I had these other mega dollar speakers in here and was able to use all the same tools that I'm using with these, plus room treatments and everything is tailored to my taste, yes, I do think stuff like the Aries Surratt, the Vox, YG 2.3s. I think those are kind of speakers that I think about, Wisdom's, their new reference line and stuff like that. These are the ones that I think about of being options that I could potentially get better performance here, because of the driver quality and just pride of ownership, aesthetics, everything combined. I think I could. But I'm just telling you that limited with all the things combined and my impressions, I think I'm getting as good or better performance than almost anything that I've heard. You're welcome anytime you're in Houston to come by, and I will do a demo for you. And I'm not one of these guys that likes to photograph people, put you on camera and get validation and do any of that. Strictly private. You can just see what you want to see, hear what you want to hear for yourself, and see if this works for you and your taste, because that's one of the important things as well. A macro takeaway is when you read these magazines, a lot of people never realize that some of these guys, and I've talked to some people that have been in these people's homes, they have ground loops that they can hear when they walk into the room. You would think that these guys are expert reviewers and would have state-of-the-art systems and noise floors and all that. They don't. A lot of them don't. And when you see their rooms and hear about other people's experiences, that you start to learn that, hey, I probably shouldn't just blanketly follow their advice. And so again, anytime you question anything you should question anything I say. And if you could come to town, you want to listen, you want to understand what I hear and what I think matters based on my years of experience, feel free to come by. In terms of other takeaways, I do think that there are a few negatives that I did want to point out. I talked about in the initial video. There was some supply chain issues with Danny and getting the drivers. I haven't been on Audio Circle. I haven't been following his videos recently, such that I don't know if those are still the case. I did have trouble with 3 of these 4. Actually, these are the most expensive drivers, these mid-range ones. I had 3 of the 4. 2 of them I was able to repair myself. One of them I had to return. And then I did have one driver, one of these 6-inch woofers that I had to have replaced. I don't know if that's still an issue, was an issue. I was told I was unlucky. I think I saw another thread where somebody else had that same problem and they knew about it. So I'm not sure. Like I told people before, Danny's growing a lot, at least, especially when I was buying these. And sometimes as you own a business like I do, you realize you can die just as easy from indigestion as starvation. So hopefully he's been able to grow and put things into place with his suppliers and employees and all that. And like I said, I've met him. He seems like a quality guy. I know he's got a lot of grief online for some of this other stuff, drama he got into. And I will say I wasn't impressed with the pissing contest and all that stuff either. I think, especially with a growing business, there's a much better use of his time than doing that. And I also think there's a much better use of his time than constantly doing mods of clip speakers. I wish, let's face it, this is a great speaker, and kudos to him for creating something that doesn't need to be updated each year. It will stand the test of time for a long time. But will it eventually be superseded? Yes, everything does. Everything gets superseded. I would rather see him working on things to improve his existing line. And like I said, I still stand by a couple of suggestions, constructive criticism in terms of where this speaker can go in the future. I think I even mentioned in the first video as the XXX Nxtreme, the Ron Jeremy version of these, although he's in jail now. We probably don't want to use that for marketing. But I still think an option to have these fabricated in modular sections, one section for the MTM and then 2 separate sections for the bass modules, and do it in a Panzerholt prefab and pre-CNC'd, that would be tremendous, and it would help compete with the Linkwitz that offers now the Panzerholtz option. And it's just a far superior material to MDF, although this is a great material. There's tons of bracing. The no res works fairly good. I will say after a year, it tends to like to pull away. So the adhesive is not super strong. I would add extra glue when I'm putting it on, especially if you're doing it in a sealed box where you don't know if it's pulling away from the box after a year or a few months. The adhesive of the no-res seems to be a little bit variable in quality and consistency and long-lasting. So I would recommend that as a constructive option to look at. But again, and then maybe start investing in, is there any way to use maybe an AMT tweeter in here and find another driver complement? Those purified drivers are very impressive looking. Maybe those can be improvements over these. The SB acoustics that I think he's even touted in some Tyler acoustic designs measure extremely well and may be a better supplier than the Peerless. I would look at those in terms of my constructive feedback. So that still stands where I think the speaker can go. Does it already today, under $10,000, outperform just about anything? Yes. Can you get the performance with your taste and with your how you make things with other things in your room to compete it with cost no object? Yes. Can't give a better endorsement than that, but anything in life can be improved. So I do want to get those things out there as well and be as honest as possible with you about that. So really, I don't have anything much to add, except you want to see the rest of my shirt? They dared me to wear this. Okay. So I'm going to go head over to 3MA, show these guys, see how many people I can piss off with this shirt. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon with a lot more.